My name is Callum, and the night the lights went out, I was carrying 43 pages of someone else's presentation and thinking about nothing except whether the elevator was still running. Tuesday. Late. The kind of late where the building stops pretending to be a building and starts just being a set of rooms with furniture in them. Most of the floor had emptied out by 6. By 7:30 it was me, the hum of the HVAC, and the receptionist on her way to her coat.
You're still here?
Callum, still here.
She's in the conference room. With her friend. I'd knock.
She left without explaining which part of that I was supposed to take as a warning. The hallway was the kind of quiet that collects at the end of a day. Chairs pushed in, screens dark, someone's forgotten coffee going cold on a desk near the window. He carried the printed decks toward the conference room at the end of the hall and paused outside it. 2 voices. Low. The easy overlap of people who've been finishing each other's sentences for years. He knocked once and pushed the door open.
Callum. Come in. Close it behind you.
Simone Reeves, VP of Operations. 43 years old. The kind of woman who makes a conference room feel smaller just by being the one sitting at the head of it. She had her reading glasses pushed up into her hair and a coffee cup near her left hand, and the specific quality of composure that belongs to people who are never surprised by anything they haven't already accounted for. The woman across from her was watching him the moment the door opened.
This is Blythe. She was in for a brand meeting this afternoon. Stayed too long as usual.
I stayed exactly as long as it was interesting.
Blythe looked at him the way someone looks at a thing they find immediately worth their attention and don't feel any particular need to disguise that.
Callum. I've got the decks for tomorrow's 9 o'clock.
Set them down. Walk me through the section breakdown.
He set the stack on the table, moved to her side of it. She pulled the top copy toward her without looking up and opened it to the 3rd page. Already knowing which page it would be, already 2 steps into a conversation he hadn't started yet.
Executive summary leads. Market positioning second. The projections are at the back because the design team thought front-loading the numbers would.
It would. Good call. What's the source on the Q3 comparison?
Mercer data. Cross-referenced with the internal poll Marcus ran last week.
Show me.
He leaned in to point to the footer citation. Her shoulder was 3 inches from his chest. She smelled like something warm and expensive and completely unannounced. She didn't move to give him more room. He didn't manufacture more distance than the page required.
The layout on that slide is wrong, by the way. The I goes left before it goes to the headline.
That's actually intentional. Leads them to the context before the claim.
HM.
She said it like she was filing the information somewhere useful.
Leave a set with me. I'll finish reviewing tonight.
He straightened. She still hadn't looked up from the page. He was collecting the remaining copies when the building made a sound it had never made before, a low mechanical exhale, like something enormous letting go, and every light in the room went out at once. Not a flicker, not a warning, just the complete and immediate absence of everything the electricity had been holding in place. 3 people, 1 room, darkness that had weight and temperature and direction. And then Simone's breath, measured, controlled, utterly her, landed against his shoulder. She did not move away from it. Neither did he. 3 minutes into the blackout. Maybe 4. Time does something different in complete darkness. It stops moving in a straight line and starts pulling. Blythe had her phone face up on the chair arm. Enough light to establish that the room still existed. Not enough to make anyone feel observed. Simone was close. Her shoulder against his arm. Her presence something he could locate without looking. Blythe had settled back into her chair like the power cut was a scheduling inconvenience she intended to wait out with full composure.
Building maintenance will have a timeline. These things are usually a transformer issue. 20 minutes. Maybe 40.
I know. I'm not worried about the building.
A beat. The particular quality of a pause that isn't empty.
You're worried about the 9 o'clock.
The decks are printed. The 9 o'clock will happen regardless.
Then you're not worried about anything.
No.
She said it quietly, like a door closing from the inside. He turned toward her. In the low peripheral glow from Blythe's phone, he could see the line of her jaw, the edge of her shoulder, the way she was standing, not rigid, not relaxed. Present. Fully, deliberately present. The way she was in every room she occupied, except that the darkness had removed the professional frame around it and left only the fact of her.
Simone.
Not her title, not a question, just her name, said at a volume that belonged only to the distance between them. She turned her head toward him. He said one thing. Low, direct, not about the blackout or the building or the decks on the table behind them. One observation about her, specific, unhurried, the kind of thing that can only be said when the light is gone and the architecture of the professional day has stopped enforcing itself. She was quiet for longer than the line required.
Callum.
The way she said it. Not the way a boss says a name. Not the way someone uses a name to redirect or correct or maintain a necessary distance. The way it sounds when someone has been privately holding a word in their mouth for longer than tonight, and the dark finally made putting it down feel like the only reasonable thing. From the chair, Blythe made a sound. Small, deliberate, not surprise. The specific sound of recognition. Simone turned toward him fully. He didn't move back. She kissed him the way someone kisses when they've already decided. Not testing, not asking, not tentative at the edges. Her mouth was warm and certain, and she kissed him like the decision had been made somewhere earlier in the evening, and this was simply the moment it arrived in the room. His hand came up to her jaw, then into her hair. He pulled her head back slightly, changing the angle, deepening it, and she made a sound against his mouth that she didn't try to swallow. Her hands were at his chest. Not pushing, holding. It went further than either of them had planned for the first 30 seconds. Her body had moved into his. His other hand was at her waist, at the fabric of her blazer, fingers finding the shape of her through it. Her mouth opened. The sound of their breathing was specific and uneven and belonged entirely to the two of them in the dark. Then she pulled back. Not away. Back. Her forehead came to rest against his. Her hands stayed where they were. The breath leaving her was slow and deliberate, like something being carefully set down.
That was...
Yes.
I wasn't going to say it was a mistake.
I know.
From the corner of the room, the soft shift of weight in a chair. Blythe, adjusting her position. Not leaving. Not announcing herself. Simply making it known, with one small movement in the dark, that she was still exactly where she had been. Still watching. Still choosing to stay. The phone light died somewhere in the previous 10 minutes. Where someone put it face down. The result was the same. Genuine dark now, the kind that has texture, that presses against the eyes and makes every other sense recalibrate to compensate. He could locate her by warmth. By the specific scent of her at close range. That warm, expensive thing he'd caught briefly at the table. Now fuller, more present. No longer something he was catching at the edge of professionalism and filing away. He wasn't filing anything away. Blythe was to the left, not moving. The quality of her stillness was its own kind of presence, deliberate, composed, the stillness of someone who has made a decision about where they are and intends to stay there.
You should know I have excellent spatial awareness in the dark.
A beat.
She's not joking.
I wasn't planning on forgetting she was here.
Good. That would have been insulting.
The way she said it, dry, unbothered, with the specific ease of someone who had already absorbed the situation and arrived at her own position on it, told him something about the two of them together. About what kind of friendship this was. About how much these two women kept from each other, which was apparently very little. He stood with that for one breath. Then he moved. Both hands. Her hips. He pulled her in with the kind of intention that doesn't ask first and doesn't need to. The kind that is only possible when both people have already answered the question and are simply waiting for someone to act on it. The sound she made was low, right into his neck. Not performed, not shaped for anyone. The specific sound of something kept carefully managed, finally released at close range, quiet and unguarded and more honest than anything she'd said out loud tonight. He held her there. His hands moved, up from her hips, along the line of her back, learning the shape of her through the fabric of her blazer with the slow, specific pressure of someone who intends to know exactly what they're holding. She pressed in. Her hands found the front of his shirt. Not the way they'd held him before, not steadying, not testing. Pulling. The blazer came off her shoulders with her help and his. her arms sliding back, the fabric dropping somewhere behind her onto the table or the floor, neither of them tracking it. Beneath it she was warm. The thin fabric of her blouse against his palms was different from the blazer, closer, more honest, the heat of her body coming through it directly. He moved one hand up her spine slowly. She made a sound at the specific pressure of it, her forehead dropping to his shoulder, her breath uneven against his collar.
Look at me.
She lifted her head. In the dark he couldn't see her eyes, but he could feel the shift, her face turning up toward his, the warmth of her breath against his mouth, the specific charged stillness of two people at zero distance with nothing left between them that has any power to stop what's already happening. His hands stilled against her back, holding, not moving, the restraint of it deliberate, the specific quality of wanting something completely and making it wait one more breath, because that breath is its own kind of pleasure.
Callum.
Not a question, not a direction. His name in her mouth at that volume, with that specific weight behind it, was the sound of a threshold being crossed from the inside. From the doorway, because she had moved to the doorway, silently, at some point in the previous minutes without either of them tracking it. Blythe's outline appeared in the thin emergency light bleeding up from the floor below. Not leaving, not speaking, standing in the frame of the door with the faint light behind her catching only her silhouette. Arms loose at her sides, head slightly tilted, the posture of someone who has chosen exactly where they are standing and has no intention of choosing differently. Simone felt him register it. She turned her head toward the doorway, then back to him. She did not step back. Neither did he. Blythe's outline in the doorway was the only fixed point in the room. Everything else had stopped being fixed some time ago. Simone's hands were at the buttons of his shirt, not rushing. The deliberate, unhurried movement of someone who has decided that patience is its own form of intention, each button a choice, made completely, before moving to the next. He stood still for it. Let her work. Tracked the specific warmth of her fingertips where they grazed his chest between each one. When she spread the fabric open and pressed both palms flat against his chest, he exhaled. One slow, controlled breath through his nose, and put his hands back on her.
Callum.
Different from before. Every time she said his name tonight, it meant something different. This one meant, now? He walked her back. One step, two, until her lower back met the edge of the conference table, and she stopped. And he stopped with her, and the table took both their weights as she reached back to brace against it. He found the hem of her blouse, moved both hands beneath it. The skin of her waist was warm and smooth, and she pulled in a sharp breath at the temperature difference between his palms and her, and he held them there, still, until her breathing evened. Then he moved. Her blouse, his shirt, the table behind her held steady. The dark held everything else, the room, the building, the city below the windows going about its Tuesday night completely unaware. In here there was only the specific heat between two bodies at full proximity, the sound of fabric, the sound of breath, the sound of her. She made a sound when his hands found a specific place and stayed there with full, unhurried intention, not a performance, nothing shaped for effect, the involuntary honest sound of a person responding to being touched exactly as they want to be touched by someone who is paying complete attention. He paid complete attention.
Don't stop.
I'm not stopping.
Her legs came around him. The table held. She pulled him in by the back of his neck with one hand and kissed him differently than she had in the dark earlier. Less controlled, more present, the specific quality of a kiss that has stopped managing itself and is simply happening entirely. What followed was not rushed and not slow. It was the pace of two people who have stopped negotiating with themselves and are simply, finally, completely there. Her hands knowing where to go, his hands knowing where to go, the sounds between them low and specific and belonging only to this room and this dark and these two people. At some point her eyes went to the doorway. Blythe's outline, still there, still holding the same posture. Arms loose, head slightly tilted, the emergency light from below catching only the edge of her shoulder and the line of her jaw. Watching with the specific, composed attention of someone who is exactly where they chose to be. Simone looked at the doorway, then back at him. She pulled him closer. He went. The moment of it, the specific moment where everything the story had been building toward arrived, and simply was, happened without announcement, without ceremony, in full dark in a conference room on the 14th floor of a building whose lights had gone out at precisely the right time or the worst possible time, depending on which version of the next morning anyone was planning to live in. Neither of them was planning the next morning. They were here. Completely here. That was the only thing that was true. And then, stillness. The particular quality of after. Her forehead at his collarbone. Her breath slowing against his skin in long measured pulls. The warmth of her weight against him settling into something that wasn't urgency anymore. His hands, where they were. The room quiet around them. The table, the scattered deck pages, the pushed-aside chairs. All of it irrelevant and present at the same time. Blythe had not moved. Her outline in the doorway was the last fixed point. The emergency light behind her. The complete silence she was maintaining. Not absence, not distance. A different kind of presence. The presence of someone who understood exactly what they had just witnessed and was holding it with both hands. Nobody spoke. The building settled around them. That was enough. The lights came back the way they always do after something irreversible, without ceremony, without warning, with complete indifference to what they were interrupting. Full fluorescent. Every tube in the ceiling at once. The conference room snapped back into existence. The table, the scattered presentation pages, 2 coffee cups, for pushed-aside chairs, and 3 people caught in the specific uncomfortable honesty of ordinary light arriving after extraordinary dark. Nobody moved for a full second.
Well, that's one way to wait out a power cut.
She said it from the doorway without changing her expression. The same composed, slightly tilted posture. Like she was filing a report.
Blythe.
I'm not saying anything.
You just said something.
I said one thing. That's practically silence.
Simone looked at him. The fluorescent light was not kind to the moment. It was flat and complete and left nothing in shadow, and she held his eyes in it without flinching, without adjusting her expression into anything more manageable. She looked exactly like what she was. A woman who had just made a decision in the dark and was looking at it now in full light and not revising it. From somewhere below, the sound of the elevator engaging. Building maintenance, making their rounds.
That'll be the 3rd floor team. They'll work up. We have 10 minutes before someone knocks.
She picked up her bag from the chair, slung it over one shoulder, looked at Simone for a long moment. The specific look of 2 people who have been each other's reference point for long enough that an entire conversation can happen in 3 seconds of eye contact. Then she looked at Callum.
You're not what I expected.
What did you expect?
Someone easier to read.
She held his gaze for 1 beat longer than was necessary. Then she said one thing. Only to him, quietly, at a register that didn't include Simone even though Simone was 4 feet away. Something that told him exactly what she had understood about what happened in the dark, and exactly what she intended to do with that understanding. Which was everything, and nothing, at the same time. Then she left. The door behind her didn't quite close. Left an inch of the hallway visible, the sound of the building coming back to life drifting through. Simone crossed to the door and pushed it fully shut. When she turned around, she didn't go back to the head of the table. She sat on the edge of it, arms crossed lightly, one heel hooked against the table leg, her blouse still carrying the evidence of the last hour in ways that the fluorescent light made entirely visible and that she made no move to correct.
Ask me what you want to ask me.
How long?
How long what?
You know what?
She looked at the window. The city outside doing what cities do. Indifferent, continuous, lit by its own reasons.
Since the Henderson pitch. 8 months ago. You argued with me in front of the whole team about the rollout timeline.
You were wrong about the timeline.
I know. That's when it started.
He moved toward her. Not fast. The specific pace of someone who is no longer operating under darkness or urgency, but under full light and full choice, which is slower and means more. His hands found her waist again. Different from before. The first time had been ignition. Heat finding heat in the dark. The momentum of something that had been building, without permission finally breaking through. This was different. This was both hands on her with full knowledge of what they were holding and the unhurried intention of someone who has already had the thing once and understands now exactly how much it is worth. She uncrossed her arms, put them around his neck. What happened the second time happened in full light, on a conference table covered in presentation pages, with the sound of the building's maintenance crew 2 floors below and the city outside the window, and every fluorescent tube doing its flat, indifferent job overhead. It was slower, more deliberate. His hands knew where to go. Her responses were different without the dark, more direct, less contained. The specific quality of someone who has stopped managing what they allow themselves to show because the person they're showing it to has already seen everything. Afterward, she sat with her back against his chest, his arms around her, both of them looking at the door Blythe had walked through.
She said you weren't what she expected.
She told me something before she left.
I know what she told you.
Then you know it changes things.
Simone was quiet for a moment. The specific quiet of someone sitting with something that is true and deciding how much of the truth to pick up at once.
It changes things.
He watched her reach for her blazer from the back of the nearest chair. She shook it out once, a precise, habitual gesture, and put it on with the same composure she brought to everything. Smoothed the front of it. Then she looked at him over her shoulder. The look of someone who has made a decision and is completely comfortable being seen making it. 3 days. The office reassembled itself around what had happened the way offices do, completely, efficiently, without acknowledgement. The floor plan was the same. The calendar was the same. The Tuesday night existed only in the specific charge that occupied the professional distance between them every time they were in the same room. Which was often, because she was his boss, because the work didn't pause for what the dark had done. He'd had 3 interactions with her since. One in the morning stand-up, 12 people in the room, her eyes finding his for exactly 1 second longer than anyone else's before moving on. One in the corridor outside the print room. She'd handed him a revised brief without stopping walking, her fingers brushing his as he took it, neither of them reacting. One email at 11:17 p.m., subject line, Q4 framework, thoughts? Professional. Completely professional. He'd read it 4 times before answering. Thursday afternoon, she called him into her office. The door stayed open. Glass walls on 2 sides. The floor visible through both of them, heads down at desks. The ordinary machinery of a workday running at full efficiency.
Close it.
He closed it. Sat across from her. She had a document open on her screen, but she wasn't looking at it.
The board met Tuesday morning. Before the blackout. I didn't have the final language until this morning.
What language?
They're restructuring the operations division. Consolidating 2 regional heads into one. The role is based in Amsterdam. They've asked me to consider it.
He looked at her. She looked back, direct, unreadable in the way she was unreadable when she was being most deliberate about what she was allowing through.
Consider it or take it.
Consider it. Formally. Which means they expect me to take it.
And your department?
Absorbed into the London vertical. New head brought in. Your position would likely survive the restructure, but the reporting line changes entirely.
He let that sit for a moment. The specific weight of information that arrives packaged as professional news and means something else entirely underneath.
When do they need an answer?
2 weeks.
Her phone lit up on the desk between them. She glanced at it. Something shifted in her expression, 1 degree, barely visible. The specific micro-adjustment of someone who recognizes a complication arriving at an inconvenient time.
Excuse me a moment.
She picked up, turned slightly toward the window. Her voice dropped, not to nothing, just below the register that carries through glass walls. He caught fragments. Blythe's name once. A pause where she listened. Her shoulder blades pulled together slightly under her blazer. The physical signature of something landing that she wasn't entirely prepared for. 30 seconds. She ended the call. Set the phone down. Stayed facing the window for a moment longer than necessary.
What did she say?
Nothing that's relevant to the restructure.
That's not what I asked.
She turned. The composure was intact, but something behind it was working harder than usual. The specific quality of a woman managing 2 true things at once, and finding them heavier in combination than either was alone.
Blythe has opinions.
About Amsterdam.
About Amsterdam. Among other things.
Tell me the other things.
A beat. The floor outside the glass walls went about its business. Someone walked past without looking in. The city held its position outside the window.
She thinks I've already decided. About all of it.
Have you?
Simone looked at him steadily. Then she did something he hadn't seen her do in 8 months of working for her. She didn't answer. Not a deflection, not a redirect, not the clipped efficiency she used to close down lines of conversation that had stopped being useful. She simply held his question in the space between them and let it stay unanswered.
I'm not asking about Amsterdam.
I know what you're asking.
Then tell me what you're deciding.
She crossed to the window. One hand came up to the glass, not leaning, just touching it. The city on the other side going about its Thursday in complete indifference to what was happening on the 14th floor. He didn't leave, didn't move toward her, stood exactly where he was, and let the silence do what silence does when both people inside it understand its full weight. The glass walls showed them to the floor. 2 people, 1 office. The professional geometry of it, the desk between them, the door behind him, the city beyond her, holding them in a shape that had stopped accurately describing what was true. She didn't turn around. He didn't leave. The city outside the window held its light. She called at 8:17. No preamble. Just an address, and his name said the way it had been said in the dark 3 nights ago, not the way a boss says it. He came. Her apartment was on the 9th floor of a building that had nothing to do with the office. No glass walls, no fluorescent overhead, no professional geometry holding anything in a shape it had outgrown. The hallway smelled like old wood and something cooking 2 floors below. He knocked once. Blythe opened the door. She looked at him the way she'd looked at him from the conference room doorway, but in full light now, nothing behind her but a lit apartment and the sound of Simone somewhere inside it. The same composure, different edge. The edge of someone who has had 3 days to think about what she saw and has arrived at a position she's entirely comfortable with.
You came quickly.
She called.
Yes. We decided you should.
The we landed without apology. He looked at her for a moment. Then she stepped back and let him in. The apartment told him things the office never had. Bookshelves with actual books in them. A kitchen that had been used tonight. 2 wine glasses and a third set out on the counter like a decision made in advance. Photographs on the far wall. A life that had been completely itself before he arrived in it, and would be completely itself regardless of what he chose. Only different now. Only changed in the specific way that things change when something real has entered them. Simone was standing by the window. Same posture as the office, but without the glass wall between her and the city, without the desk, without the professional frame. Just her, in her own space, in a dark shirt with her arms loose at her sides, looking at him the way she'd looked at him over her shoulder when she put her blazer back on. The look of someone who has decided and is comfortable being seen deciding.
Amsterdam.
Tell me.
I called them this morning. I told them no.
He held that. 1 breath. 2.
Because of the restructure.
No.
Then say it plainly.
Because of this. Because of Tuesday. Because of 8 months of watching you argue correctly about things I'd already made up my mind on and finding that interesting. Because I am 43 years old and I know exactly what it feels like when something is worth staying for, and I haven't felt it in long enough that I'd stopped expecting to.
Blythe, from the kitchen, set down a glass without comment.
She practiced that, for what it's worth. It was longer the first time.
Blythe.
I'm helping.
He crossed the room, both hands on Simone's face, the specific warmth of her jaw against his palms, the way she leaned into it almost before he got there, like the movement toward him was already happening and his hands just met it arriving. He kissed her in full light with full knowledge in her own apartment with Blythe 12 feet away, making no move to be anywhere else. And it was different from every previous version of this. Not ignition, not urgency. Not the momentum of a dark room and a building-wide power cut and rules that had stopped enforcing themselves. This was chosen, completely, by both of them, in every possible light. What happened after was slower than the conference table and truer than the dark, her hands knowing him now, his hands knowing her, The specific quality of familiarity layered over desire, making every movement carry twice the weight. Blythe did not leave. She settled into the chair by the kitchen with her wine and the particular composed attention that was simply her way of being present, watching without distance, close without intrusion, the third point of something that didn't have a clean name yet and didn't need one. Afterward, the apartment was quiet. The city outside the window, the 2 wine glasses, and the third on the counter. Simone was beside him. Blythe had moved at some point to the window, standing where Simone had been standing when he arrived, the city behind her, her glass in one hand, looking at neither of them and both of them at once. He noticed one thing. Blythe's reflection in the dark window glass, her outline, her composed posture, the slight tilt of her head, was the same shape she'd made in the conference room doorway 3 nights ago with the emergency light behind her. She hadn't moved away then. She wasn't moving away now. Some things, it turned out, looked exactly the same in the dark as they did in the light. That was the whole story.